This music, and this is a thinly veiled, penile, and testicular first impressions video. Welcome to another first impressions video. In these videos I share with you my first impressions of the many CDs I've blind bought over the last couple of years. In the previous video the harvest was kind of meager, but this time around I have this stack of CDs that I managed to listen to. So let's just get down to business. Up first, self-titled, I believe, by Downset. Rap metal from the pre-new metal era. So the generation of rap metal bands that counts Rage Against the Machine, H-Blocks, Clawfinger, Censor, and I always also count Biohazard in there. That's from what you get here. There's a lot of Rage Against the Machine worship on this one. This a similar style of groovy guitar riffage, similar funky approach, similar angry approach to rapping, except this guy is much more subdued than Zach De La Rocha, and his voice doesn't sound like Zach De La Rocha at all. The same kind of socio-political awareness, and it's actually pretty good. I quite enjoy this one. I do like rap metal, pre-new metal rap metal. I feel that things went down the drain for me, at least, in the new metal movement. I don't have a problem with people that like new metal. I don't have a problem with new metal. I just prefer the older generation of rap metal bands. And that's what you get here. This is actually pretty good. I quite enjoyed it. Up next, Vengeance by Dreadful Fate. This is inspired by early Teutonic thrash metal. So it is kind of dirty. It is kind of filthy. It is kind of blasphemous. And all that good stuff, and aggressive and fast, and just that style of thrash metal. And I know a lot of people like that, and I quite enjoyed listening to this one too, and I think you will as well if you're into blackened thrash or more primitive filthy thrash metal. So there you go, good stuff. Down by Erosion. Erosion were, or are, I don't know if they're still active, originally a crossover thrash band. This is more of a mid-tempo, kind of 90s style groove thrash kind of affair. A lot of thrash metal bands try to innovate their style anew. They try to shake things up a bit, and it didn't work out for a lot of them, but there were fortunately a lot of bands that it also worked out for, and I would say that's the case here. Solid, groovy, 90s style crossover thrash based music. I quite enjoyed this, and I'm happy to have added this one to my collection of Erosion releases. Up next, Digimortal by Fear Factory. Yeah, I hadn't heard this one before. I'd heard some of their really early material where they did industrial death metal. But on this one, they have kind of abandoned the death metal style, so it's just industrial metal, I would say. It's not bad. It's very 90s, though. It's from 2000 and something, the early 2000s, so that makes sense. It sounds very 90s. The vocals, no growls, but more like an angry kind of hardcore punk almost based way of singing, combined with the clean singing that they were famous for already back in the death metal days. It's okay. I think I do kind of enjoy this. It has a lot of the industrial metal features of their earlier style, the clockwork, precise drumming and riffage and all that stuff, but it just seems a bit more run-of-the-mill, a bit less innovative, because the death metal factor is gone. So I've heard better industrial metal by this band for sure, but it's not bad. You know, it's enjoyable for what it is. Up next, Waiting for the Night by Fortress. This is hard rock, maybe with some traditional metal leanings, and it's very interesting because some of the songs are like AOR inspired, like 80s AOR inspired, just a bit more hard hitting. And some of the songs are more like, rainbow-esque hard rock inspired. So that's actually quite interesting. I do quite enjoy how they kind of manage to combine kind of keyboard based 80s AOR stuff with your more keyboard and organ post Deep Purple type of hard rock that you associate with Rainbow, how they managed to combine that with just straight up traditional heavy metal. It's very melodic, it is very keyboard rich, so it might not appeal to everybody, but I actually quite enjoy these guys' take on the kind of retro worship of 80s rock music that's going on. So I quite enjoyed this one. I think if you like Rainbow, you might want to check this out. And also if you like I don't know, Europe or 80s melodic hard rock, check it out too. I quite enjoyed it. I didn't expect that based on this cover artwork. You might think of it as traditional doom metal or straight up new wave of traditional metal, but no, it's more like hard rock, and it's pretty good. Here we have Freak of Nature, self-titled, also hard rock, but this is 90s hard rock, and it's a Mike Tramp project, so from White Lion fame. And this is actually very good, and I think I've heard this one before. I'm positive, because I seem to remember us kind of fawning over this back in the 90s, how good it actually was. It's groovy, it's funky. You do have a couple of ballads, but they are okay. Mike Tramp sounds great on this one. The guitar work is fantastic. I really like the guitar tone. It's mildly twangy. And you don't have any sleaze or kind of glam or anything on this one. It's just unadulterated 90s hard rock. So groovy and a little bit of influence from grunge, but not a lot. And I will say that although I do love White Lion, I think this is much better than White Lion, to be perfectly honest. Excellent stuff. This one here is the Music for Nations original, I think, pressing. But I think Freak of Nature released 2 albums, and they have both been reissued on, I don't remember if it's Target Music or if it's one of the kind of sub-labels like Mighty Music or something like that. But they've been reissued on CD and on vinyl. Up next, back to the world of rap metal, H-Block's Time to Move. And unlike Rage Against the Machine and Downset, whose styles are very focused, this is kind of all over the place. It's kind of like almost like a map of 90s metal and 90s hard rock. So you do have your funky rap metal, but you also have some songs that sound like alternative metal. There's some Alice in Chains stuff going on, some not quite Nirvana, but some grungy stuff for sure. Some 90s alternative rock. You got some more Rage Against the Machine sounding kind of stuff. You have some more Red Hot Chili Peppers inspired kind of stuff. And it's less focused, and thus it seems less compelling. But I have heard this one before, to be honest. Just been a long time. And way back in the 90s, we quite enjoyed listening to this one. And I have to say, although, kind of looking back, this is all very silly. I gotta admit, it's super fun to, sing along to, rising high, living for my ding dong. That's a song about erections, by the way. That's where the penile stuff comes in, right? Or Go Freaky, or, H-Block's the title track. It's fun to sing along to these, although the lyrics are kind of dumb for the most part. So if you kind of want to take a snapshot, I want to look at a snapshot of how weird the hard rock and metal world was in the 90s. Check this one out, and it is fun. I mean, the title track, Move, it's fun. It's good fun. I still get a kick out of listening to this, although now I realize how silly it is. So there you go. Here we have The Downside by Hades. Hades were another excellent thrash metal band who did try to change up their style a little bit in the 90s. They didn't do too much though. This one here, I actually don't even know if it is from the 90s or if it's later. I think it might be from the 90s, but I'm actually not sure. It sounds kind of 90s, but they also managed to make a pretty good job of adjusting their style to the 90s. It's still thrashy. You also have some traditional heavy metal elements. And then you have some, you know, kind of more groovy mid-tempo things every now and then. It's not as good as their classics, but it's actually quite enjoyable. I really liked listening to this, to be honest. So there you go. Some comedy thrash, Handicapped. I know, terrible pun, but that's their name. It's an EP, as you can see, with 4 tracks on it. Comedy thrash, because that is a thing. There is an entire, or was, I guess, an entire sub-genre of thrash metal that was called comedy thrash, where the lyrics were fun and the music was fun. Sliced Pimples is another example of that. Vicious Aroma is another example, and Handicapped is an example here. There are 4 tracks on here, but I would say there are really only 3 real songs on here, and there are really only 2 real songs on here. The first one is called Total Thrash, and it's just a fun Total Thrash song. They thrash, and there you go. Then there's a song called Baaaallllssss, which is more of a kind of not really thrash or rocky song. It's more like a joke song. I mean, they're all joke songs, but even more jokey. And then you have Food Fight, which starts out with a weird rendition of the theme from Pippi Longstockings, and then it turns into a kind of a crossover thrash song with crazy vocals and a weird kind of waltz chorus but thrashy guitar parts. And Die Stille, the last, or Die Stille maybe, the last song is more like a pseudo track. It's more like a joke too. The guitar tone is super tight. Sounds like they went overboard with their noise gate, but it works. The drums are not really prominent at all. So the mixing is a bit weird, but it's kind of a fun listen. If you come across a cheap copy of this, do check it out. Food Fight is actually a pretty good song in its own weird way. Here comes the testicular part. Balls by a band called Humungus. So yeah, Humungus Balls. This is power thrash. Didn't expect that, to be honest. I thought it would be kind of like silly stuff like Handicapped, but it's power thrash. It's quite melodic. It's quite fast as well, quite aggressive, but not all out thrash. So that's why I call it power thrash. The vocals are from the Ozzy Osbourne school of singing. If that was a course that had been taken by somebody who was better at singing than Ozzy Osbourne, but needed to learn how to sound raw and authentic. So it's a better singer, but he doesn't sound like Ozzy Osbourne, but it's a similar approach, if you know what I mean, to singing. So imagine somebody who's a technically more proficient singer doing the Ozzy Osbourne thing. Musically, it's pretty good, solid power thrash with some old school traditional heavy metal elements every now and then too. So there you go, Humungus Balls. From Humungus Balls to In Grief, and this one is called An Eternity of Misery. So now we're going from fun to all out misery. This is Death Doom. I've previously talked about their I think it was an EP, or maybe it was a demo, but I think it was an EP called The Echoes of Doom. And I said there that this is Paradise Lost from the 90s done better than Paradise Lost, even in the 90s. And that's what they do in this one too. This is just amazing Death Doom. It's from last year or something, 2022 I think, but it sounds like it's from 93 or 94. It's amazing death doom. I really love this. If you like your death doom, do yourself a favor and check out this release and this band. They kick ass. Slowly, but they kick ass. Up next, Insane. And this one is called Mechanical Revolt. This is... I may be inspired by industrial metal. Maybe you can call it industrial thrash metal. I'm not sure. It has some industrial metal things going for it for sure, without being, you know, all out industrial metal like Fear Factory. It's a bit more thrashy. The style is kind of groovy, but more angular than you would hear on a Pantera album in terms of the riffage, and that's where it does kind of get a little bit of industrial, but the vocals, that's just straight up Phil Anselmo worship, to the point that it gets a bit annoying every now and then, but it doesn't detract from the overall listening experience. It's not a masterpiece, but I think it is pretty enjoyable, and if you can live with all the Phil Anselmo worship, and you come across a cheap copy of this, do check it out. I think you might enjoy it. If you're into industrial metal, check it out, see if it's your cup of tea. Maybe I'm wrong in saying that it's industrial thrash metal. That's just the vibe I get from it. So there you go. That's Insane. Up next, a nice short sharp shock here by Iron Spell. This is called Heavy Metal Witchcraft, just an EP with 4 tracks on it. New wave of traditional heavy metal, inspired by the new wave of British heavy metal, and also inspired by 70s hard rock a little bit. This is a good representation, I think, of the band's sound. I think, because I haven't heard any of their other output, but I quite enjoyed this one. If you like traditional heavy metal, if you like 80s metal, 70s metal, if you like all that stuff, check this one out. Quite enjoyable. Not a masterpiece, but not bad at all. Up next, Surfing with the Alien by Joe Satriani. I have heard this one before, back in the 90s. Some of the other metalheads that would also play in bands that I would hang out with were starting to get into the guitar shredder stuff, and they were inspired by Joe Satriani, so we would listen to this one, but I haven't given this a spin since then, and I picked this one up in 22, very cheap, by the way. And in terms of the guitar work, it's obviously good. What I like about Joe Satriani's style is that he is a guitar shredder, but he focuses just as much on, you know, guitar melodies and, you know, other aspects of playing the guitar than just doing blazing guitar solos. So there's lots of catchy stuff on here. The thing I don't like is that in most of the songs, the drums are programmed and they sound like MIDI drums, and they're really freaking boring. And I mean, it's Joe Satriani, dude. You could do better. You could ask a not a guitar player, ask a drummer if he wanted to play or she wanted to play with you, and they will say yes, because you're Joe Satriani. It just seems so lazy and cheap to use those programmed drums when this is stuff a human can certainly play, and it does, and it did annoy me a little bit, but not enough to detract from the excellent guitar work. I would just like to have heard a real drummer, to be perfectly honest. And up last we have self-titled by Leadbreaker. I believe they're a Swedish band. It is new wave of traditional heavy metal, but they are doing their own kind of thing. It is very inspired by the more rough and tumble kind of street style of new wave of British heavy metal, and the lyrics are so metal it hurts. I mean, it's like Judas Priest stuff, a lot of it, without the gusto of Rob Halford's lyrics, but it's a love letter to metal, and also you know, and I think this is inspired by the more street kind of new wave of British heavy metal, and maybe also Thin Lizzy and, you know, that sort of stuff. There are lots of songs about starting fights. To begin with, you go, this is kind of cool, it's kind of fun, and by the end, when you reach the title track, it gets a bit, it's like, to begin with, it's cool, then you get kind of annoyed, and then it's so much over the top that it becomes so bad it's cool, you know what I mean? So there's a bit too much lyrics-wise of the tough guy heavy metal stuff, but whatever, it fits the music and it's all good fun. But yeah, I don't think you should run into these guys, because they will start a fight, and they're Leadbreaker, and they're better than everybody else, because that's what they sing about. No, it's actually good fun. Check it out. I quite enjoyed this when I kind of got over the annoyance at the so metal it hurts lyrics. So there you go, a good stack of first impressions. I enjoyed all of them, some more than others, but if any of this sounds like interesting to you, do check them out. It's good stuff. Thanks for watching.